It's Wednesday, October 29th, and this is Arizona Mining Review. I'm your host, Lee Allison, here at the Arizona Geologic Survey in Tucson. And joining us, as he does every month, is Nyal Niemuth, Chief of our Economic Geology Program in Phoenix. Nyal, welcome back to the program.
Good morning, Lee. Thanks.
Hey, I know in the last few months we've had a lot of discussions about some of the mergers and acquisitions, uh, but there's been a lot of other developments going on in some of our copper properties and precious metals that I'd like to review with you today. So, what's some of the developments going on in copper in Arizona?
We might start with something that a lot of folks might have seen. The Arizona Republic has had a couple of stories and a guest editorial on the Resolution Copper Project. Those were prompted by a visit by Senator John McCain to the mine. He actually went underground and visited some of the areas that are being developed.
That's the big underground copper mine that is outside the town of Superior and is going to be about 7,500 feet deep or so.
That's exactly one of the things we want to talk about. They are sinking a new shaft known as the number 10 down to just shy of 7,000 feet. And if we go back over the last several months, the project got suspended as they hit some unexpectedly hot, maybe not unexpectedly hot, but very hot and a significant inflow of water that forced them to, because of safety conditions, to quit having the workers go advance the shaft. And they had to have the Sun Company come in and spend another $4 million and expand the capacity of the cooling system so that the conditions encountered could be dealt with. And what we're expecting now is to see the shaft completed by the end of this year. And that will be down to 6,000, that's not right, 6,943 feet.
Wow. Well, that's significant. I know the bottom hole or bottom temperatures they've been trying to work in are in the 175 to 185 degree Fahrenheit, but we'd heard that there hadn't been a lot of water influx. So this is probably a surprise, I think, from what you've just said.
Yeah, the last reports I'd heard, but they're dated a year or more ago, where that things have been going quite well, and they're actually surprised how little water they've been encountering.
Well, one of the numbers I heard was that the company was going to be spending more, using more energy to cool the mine, so that people could work there and the equipment could operate than it would take to actually mine the ore or process it. So those temperatures and if there's a larger volume of water, that's going to increase the heat content down there they're going to have to deal with. So this is a fairly major technological challenge they're facing.
It certainly could be, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, might be worth noting that we're going to get a more detailed update during the Arizona SME, Society of Mining Engineer conference that will be coming up in Tucson in early December. And we're going to get a paper by Ian Edgar, and it's going to be kind of not only a interesting topic, but I like his title. It's Resolution Copper, Update from 7,000 feet below the surface. So they're anticipating that they're going to be able to get down there.
Okay, so that's the SME conference that's going to be held at the Star Pass Resort here in Tucson in early December. We'll make sure that we get the date and a URL for that up on the screen.
Yeah, I'd like just to add one other note on the Resolution Copper Project. But it's been nearly a year since the mining plan of operation was released to the town of Forest. It's, I think, a month or so after that is when it became public. They are still awaiting the forest to declare that complete. When that occurs, then we'll finally get an opportunity for the public scoping for those comments to come in as part of the NEPA process. I'm sure the company is eager to get that, moving forward.
Right, that's going to be a key point before this project can move forward. So.
And the other part of the John McCain visit was that he still is a supporter and is still trying to encourage that bill to conduct a land exchange involving the Oak Flat area to move forward.
Was there any news from McCain's visit there that any progress that he could report on, or hope that it might actually move through Congress?
No, but he if you read the article in the Republic, there were certainly a lot of comments addressed ways they'd like to deal with some of the Indian opposition that's developed in terms of the sacred site and their ceremonies. And he seemed optimistic there were ways to get everybody on board.
Okay. Well, great. Thanks for the update there. I know that Baghdad has been a major copper molybdenum mine for Freeport, uh, and we don't hear a lot about it, but sounds like there's some new things going on there. What have you been hearing?
Yeah, Baghdad's always a nice producer. It's kind of an isolated cul-de-sac. No one ever seems to have visited the Baghdad area. Most people don't know where it is. They obviously confuse it with the city somewhere in the Middle East. But there's a couple of things to report there. And usually things are very smooth, uncontroversial in the Baghdad area. And so this is a little surprising. What's developing is the Freeport has purchased from the city of Scottsdale the Planet Ranch. And what they want to do is exchange some of the uses of the land, having those become more related to conservation and habitat, and transfer the water rights that are consumptively being used on that farm area to support their well field that's in the Big Sandy Valley near Wickiup. For people that aren't real familiar with Wickiup, that's the area, just kind of that big valley you drive through between Wickenburg and Kingman on Highway 93. And there's an existing well field there. It's been there a long time. And the water is pumped over to the Baghdad mine to support the operations there. Recently, they've announced that there's been an agreement reached between the Wallapai tribe and Arizona Fish and Game, where there's going to be that interagency conservation. There's going to be some funds available for water and economic development study on the Wallapai tribe. And Congress has got bills in both chambers that would codify this agreement. But what's developed and is controversial is the La Paz and Mojave County Board of Supervisors have gone on record and been reported opposing this action. A little step back for a second, the Baghdad mine is actually in Yavapai County, whereas the ranch is on the Bill Williams River in northern La Paz, adjacent to Mojave County. And so there's fear by the counties that this reduces their future economic development. And they've also got concerns about perhaps possible reduced public access to the ranch area. This is a timely matter. By December 2016, it's possible the water rights could be forfeited if this matter isn't settled. So it's quite important to the future of the Baghdad mine.
So, but that's still 2 years away, so there is a little bit of time, it sounds like, for them to try to resolve that before that risk really comes to fruition.
Yeah, so that'll be another one of those things that we'll continue to monitor and report on in future episodes. And then the other is a relatively modest thing. There's just an expansion project related to waste dumps and leach ponds. And currently, Bureau of Land Management is seeking public comments on what they're calling the stockpile extension project. And so just always kind of keep in mind that these mines that have very large future resources that get deeper, at various times they need to expand the space that they occupy. And so they're going to have hearings looking for public input on the about 600 acres of public lands and additional 90 acres of private land that are going to be disturbed by this expansion.
Okay. Is that land, is anybody living near that? Any development in the area? Does it look like that's going to be a controversial proposal going forward?
No, I suspect this will be back to the more quiet, less controversial Baghdad news that we hear. Baghdad is a small, if you will, mining town. You know, just people that work at the mine live there and a few services. And it's a lot of empty land for a long ways around.
Now, I know there's another copper project in Yavapai County, a possible copper oxide leach operation. There's something developing out there, isn't there?
Yeah, this is an old property. It's called the Zonia Mine. And about 30 years ago, this was a McAllister Fuel open pit heap leach precipitation plant operation. And in recent times, with the higher copper prices we've seen, say, in the last 10 years, we've had a couple of parties in there that have been drilling to define the remaining resources and also address some of the legacy issues that related to the last mining activity. We've got the third player now that's come in. So a little while back, we had SGV, or St. Genevieve Resources. When their activities kind of ran out of funds, the financing company Redstone got involved. And a company called Silverstream has now signed a definitive agreement with Redstone to earn in and ultimately buy out the Zonia Copper project. And so what they're hoping to acquire is about 1,700 acres of private land an additional 2,700 acres of federal mining claims. And what they're kind of forecast to do is they've got a 3-stage project. As they make their initial payments, they're going to have to come in and do some core and RC drilling. They're going to take the results of that and the work that's been done by some of these prior operators and have to put together a feasibility study, and then they can proceed to that final full acquisition.
Okay. Niall, isn't there some other developments in situ projects around the state as well?
Yeah, that'll probably be a conventional mine, but you're right. We've had some news on some of the in situ projects around the state. A couple of those are worth reporting. One, Excelsior Mining has reported a positive PEA and has been conducting some drilling for metallurgical test samples for what historically we call the I-10, what they like to refer to as their Gunnison project. This is another one of those projects that we may not talk about too much now, as we're going to have a talk by Steve Tyrwold of Excelsior Mining, and he's again got a very interesting title. He's billing that as the world's largest copper in situ mining project.
And that's going to be the SMA meeting again in early December here in Tucson at Star Pass.
Actually, absolutely. Again, yes.
Well, how about some of the activity closer to Tucson? It's been a while since we've heard about anything going on at Oracle Ridge up in the Santa Catalina Mountains.
I'm going to pause you there and jump back. We're going to talk about 2 in situ copper projects. Yeah, so just a brief update. Way back in time, I think we've noted that a company called Copper Fox Metals, doing business here in Arizona as Desert Fox, had acquired the Van Dyke project. The Van Dyke is an oxide deposit that sits off the Miami Fault underneath the town of Miami. And over the summer, they've completed 6 drill holes that both were confirming some of the prior mineralization that was defined by accidental minerals, again, about 25, 30 years ago. Then they also did some step-out drilling. And so they've completed that and made some announcements, and things are looking like they've got some of the historic grades and thicknesses.
So that sounds encouraging that they may be able to make something go of that then.
Yeah, and that's going to be another one of these projects that, although it's smoothly proceeding now, let's hope it remains that way. The access to a lot of these drill sites are in the town. This is a deposit that absolutely lies underneath the historic downtown and residential areas of Miami. So it's going to be an interesting project to follow.
Niall, we're getting a little bit short of time here, but let me go back and ask the question again about Oracle Ridge. Haven't heard much about it up in the Santa Catalinas. What's happening there?
Yes, I'd like to report on this one just because I get a lot of people asking, hey, this is moving along, we're hearing a lot about it, and now it's kind of disappeared off the radar. Why is that? And the basic story there is that earlier this year, they had announced they're going to conduct some underground drilling. They were doing that, and they've announced some results on that in this Sector 12 area of the underground mine with favorable results. But they've shut down that program in an effort to conserve cash. Similar to many of the Canadian junior companies, fundraising's difficult, funds are tight, and so they're currently assessing either some third-party options while they also look at advancing the project's permitting.
So we've got just a minute here to wrap up. I've been hearing some activity in the Patagonia Mountains south of Tucson, another player besides Wildcat Silver.
Yeah, it's interesting that we've got a property adjacent that's historically been known as the Sunnyside or Thunder Mountain. It's a former Asarco project. And just recently, we've got a company called Regal Resources that finally has received permission from the Coronado Forest to conduct some exploration drilling there. And they're going to target some relatively deep skarn, high-grade polymetallic, polybase metal, and silver areas. They hope to re-enter some old holes, go down maybe 2,500 feet, and then wedge off and define some additional areas of mineralization.
Okay, so they're in their very early stages, it sounds like.
Exactly. But again, it could be pretty exciting intercepts when we see those because of the high grade in those skarns.
Okay, well, we need to move on, and the timing of this is ideal because we've got Floyd coming on in just a moment here to talk about some problems with some orange sludge down in the Patagonia Mountains, and he's going to try to give us a better idea of what's the source of that and what the potential impacts are. So, Lyle, thanks for joining us as always, and we look forward to having you back on next month.
Thank you, Lee.
All right. Joining us now is Floyd Gray, a geologist with USGS Minerals Program here in Tucson. Floyd, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Very glad to be here, Lee.
All right. Well, in the last couple of weeks, there's been some headline articles here in the local paper about orange sludge related to some old mining properties up in the Patagonia mountains. Some questions about what is the source of this orange sludge, and it's fairly confusing. It's a difficult topic to get our hands around. So I'm wondering, you're referenced in both articles. You're the guy who's been out at the site. What's going on out there?
It's a good question. It's a good question. We did get out to the site a couple of days after it was identified. Okay. What we saw, there are two situations. One is an abandoned mine lands release. The other was a very early closure. That's the trench camp area. So we saw basically an overspill and then what appeared to be a tunnel flush.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So most of the activity, both of in the papers and whatnot, identified the orange sludge.
Mm-hmm.
The orange sludge, we think, is from a tunnel flush, which is very low oxygen waters, high, really low acidity. And that came out and it interacted with fresh waters, neutral waters, and a very iron-rich flocculant or a chemical precipitate dropped out. And that precipitate is principally iron, aluminum, silicon, magnesium, and then it has whatever chemistry of trace metals, and particularly important, the heavy metals that accompany the mine drainage from that area.
So when you talk about a tunnel flush, this is an old mining adit, a mining tunnel.
Yeah.
And what were they mining in that area?
They were mining lead and silver.
Okay.
And these are underground vein deposits that they were working on. And it's really a tunnel, it's a group of deposits. And I believe that it's been identified as the Lead Queen, but it's really something called the Whelan or Buffalo Group. And it consists of the Daisy Rose, the Lead Queen, and the Summit and the Basin Mine. I think they're all sort of interconnecting tunnels, okay? And some of the early Bureau of Mines reports only show about 70, 80 feet depth of tunneling, okay? And so it wasn't extensive tunneling, but it was enough. And we think that there was enough combined rain, and it wasn't just a storm. There was enough combined rain that this flushed out some low DO tunnel water.
Okay. So water coming down, percolating down through the ground into the tunnel, or coming in through the mouth of it?
Actually coming through various tunnel openings and added openings.
Okay. And then it came
and
out.
it came out in a lower area. This is the lowermost,
Okay.
higher adits and stopes up the mountain, and a second pile around another bend. We think that water got in and didn't have time to drain, and it eventually pushed out the lowest portion of the tunnel.
Okay.
And then interacted with this fresh water.
Okay. And picked up the orange being mostly iron or
Yeah.
or
Now,
iron.
what's interesting is that to some extent this happens every monsoon. But what doesn't happen is the tunnel flush. So we actually see acid water interacting with fresh water. And that gives, normally in an oxygenated situation, you get a milky aluminum-rich flocculant. Okay, and it's lighter, so it floats a little bit more.
Oh.
But it's foam, and people have seen the foam, and they've seen sort of the milky precipitate every year. So what happened this September, and you know, we don't have really good numbers on the extent of the rain, but it was a record rain for September, I think, if not this portion of the monsoon. And that is what that created this flush. It wasn't a standard thing.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's one piece of it. There
That's
was
one
another
piece of it.
Okay.
There's another piece.
All right.
Okay, the second piece happened in another watershed just uphill called Alum Gulch.
Alum?
Alum Gulch.
Okay.
It's called Alum Flux Canyons in some some places.
Alum named after the mineral.
The mineral.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the head of Alum Gulch is the Trench Camp January Adit Complex.
Okay. Again,
Okay.
multiple adits,
Multiple
mine
adits.
tunnels.
Again, in fact, there's
Okay.
been cited as much as 57,000 feet of tunneling.
Wow.
And then there's several layers of tailings piles. It's not quite as extensive as Green Valley, but there's sort of football-sized field areas of tailings, okay? And they kind of come down to a narrow drainage. And there's been some dams put up, or earthen dams, that block it from any surficial escape, okay? So that broke. There was enough
One of
water.
those earthen dams broke.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was enough water in the system it broke containment, came across the road and got into Alum Gulch. There's a culvert system that also taps that. And for the first time, I've worked in that area for maybe 10, 12 years, and I've never seen water come out of that area.
So this
Okay.
is the first.
This is
for
first. It's first for me, first for maybe 12 years of looking at the canyon and whatnot. The other thing that happened in the same vicinity was there's the January adit has been blocked. It's been pre-treated and routed into an artificial wetlands. Okay.
And how long ago was that done? That's quite some time.
These were done before the 82, 84.
1982 and
Yeah,
1982.
1982.
So they've
So
been there
the
for
technology
30
we're
some
looking
years.
at, and the engineering
Okay.
is some of the early closure technology. They closed
Okay.
it under legal observation, under most of the regulations that we have.
Okay, whereas in the old days,
The
miners
other
would
one,
walk
Lead
away
Queen,
from an
Lead
old
Queen is a
mine.
walk away. It's an
Right.
abandoned mine situation.
Right, back from a century ago, and
right.
there were no rules or laws then.
No rules. The rules
Yeah.
were put them in the drainage so it could go away, go down the drainage. But
Okay, all right, sorry, let's get back
But the
to
wetlands also, so the wetlands was contained,
Right.
and there's a constant flow into the wetlands. And it's been pre-treated inside the tunnel. So it's a higher pH water.
Okay.
And there are some.
Closer to neutral.
Closer to neutral, yeah.
Okay.
So I noticed, just in looking at it the last week or two, there's also some natural drainages that come in. And those natural drainages contributed to flooding the wetlands. And the wetlands topped over their containment as well and broke through and ran down the road and into Alum Gulch as well.
Okay.
So there are two different.
Okay, but now the stuff coming into the wetlands wasn't an orange sludge because it had been
No,
treated.
no. Yeah,
So
it's
it was
pre-treated.
coming in nearly
Right.
neutral.
Right.
So it was just water.
Just
basic.
water.
Okay.
And it has some of the original mine water, but it's pre-treated. And there's some sludge that comes out of the pipe, but it sits in the wetlands. It's never
Okay.
escaped.
And so within the
Okay.
wetlands environment,
Yeah.
it's designed
There-
to incorporate that, and break it
that.
down.
Yeah,
or-
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and then there's cattails that uptake
okay.
the mine drainage.
Okay.
Okay, so there's basically three separate situations.
Yes.
And so when people talk, sometimes they get confused, and who owns what, I'm really not sure at this point. It used to be a Sarco complex.
Which one are we talking about? Both
The,
of them? Or
the trench camp.
Trench
The trench
camp,
camp and the
okay.
wetlands
Oh,
and the January adit, all part of that mining complex that was a Sarco's property.
okay.
Okay, and I'm not sure what was traded or given to what in the last couple of years, but it has changed hands.
Right. And there's a
So-
difference in some cases between the mineral rights and the surface
And the
ownership.
surface ownership.
So it's a
Yeah.
little bit confusing out there.
Yeah.
And I think that came across in the newspaper articles. It's a very complex situation.
It is complex. Luckily, we only look at the process. We
Right, yes. Yeah. We're scientists,
We're
we're
scientists.
geologists.
We don't know anything
Yeah.
except the process.
Right,
Yeah.
let the lawyers figure out
Right.
who's
It's
liable.
best.
Yes,
It's best.
okay. So you mentioned iron, silicon,
Mhm.
and a few other things
Yeah.
coming out. Now, since the trench camp had some lead,
Yeah.
was a lead mine.
Lead, silver.
Is there
Yeah.
a small amount of lead or silver,
Yes.
those heavy metals
Yes. So
coming out?
There are trace heavy metals in each
Okay.
one of these precipitates that form.
All right.
So there's a certain concentration of lead, cadmium, zinc, moly, copper.
Okay.
Okay, that most people are concerned with. There's also manganese and very minor silver, because silver doesn't particularly move.
Okay.
But so what we've done is we've sampled both the water and the sludge or the precipitate, and it's been referred to as sediment, sludge, flocculant, or colloidal. It depends on what you want to call it, but we've sampled that in a couple of different situations, and we're waiting for lab results at this time. We're going to go back and do some more.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have a sense of the volume of material that may be moving there?
Well, for the, with the aluminum, when it's just the aluminum, it washes down very rapidly. So what you see in the bottom of the creek are heavies, or what basically dropped out when you got off peak flow. Okay.
Okay.
For the iron-rich stuff, I don't know if it moves as well. It's heavier. It's probably denser, and a large portion of it remained in the channel.
Okay.
Okay, so none of us, including the people who discovered the event, saw peak flow. Okay, so we don't know. It was either overnight or early in the morning, or the 23rd, 24th. So we were called after the 24th.
This is September 24th.
September 24th.
Okay.
I came out on the 26th. So we're looking at what was left in the drainage at that
Okay.
point. Okay? And we're going to do some closer measurements, but it was a little over 1.5 miles, closer to 1.75 miles. And it ranged or averaged about 3.5 to 4 inches of sludge in the creek bottom.
Okay.
For that length.
1.5 to
Almost
1.75
one-
miles.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what you're
Bright
saying is
red, sometimes
Okay.
blood orange. So it was pretty dramatic.
okay, but that's probably the
That's the iron.
the iron
the
and
ochre.
the other heavies.
The other
that are
name for it
dropping
is
out.
ochre.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the cavemen used it to paint with in the early days.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. Has there been any petroglyphs or paintings out in that area?
So
where-
far, I haven't seen it. But
Okay. All right.
we will get a archaeologist out there at some
Okay.
point. Yeah.
So you've got samples that are being analyzed right now.
Yeah.
What are
Yeah.
your next steps? What's the USGS going to be doing next?
Well, we have been chartered by the Forest Service to do a summary of the Patagonia Mountains, incomplete. I also have some papers in preparation that I'm working on in Harshaw Creek. But they've all over the years looked at the status, and the status has been pretty stable
yeah.
in the last 5-6 years. Even in monsoon pulses, we know what's coming down. This caught us by surprise a little bit, so we're actually going to look at targeting this particular event and looking at its potential. And we're going to try to have a ready team ready for this kind of event in the future. But we're going to examine, because this was first in a long time,
Yeah.
we're going to try to trace the cause of the problem. So we'll trace the area around the vent, and then we'll start to look at sediments downstream, and then we'll go to some target areas, Sonoita Creek and eventually Patagonia Lake, and see how widespread the distribution really was. So there's a lot of dispersion that went on after it left the site. There's a lot of water that went in intervening between the site of origin and the target. So we're going to try to examine what actually happened during that event
Okay.
and come back with analyses and just tell everybody a little bit
Great.
more about what happened.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
And try to do a prediction, okay, a predictive map of some sorts. We're going to have to re-examine tunnels and how they're oriented.
And is that just for these properties, or are you going to be looking over a wider?
We're going to
swath?
look over wider Patagonia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So across the whole
Across the
Patagonia?
whole, yeah.
Okay, so try to identify those areas that might be at risk
Yeah.
for events like this
And
to
we'll
occur.
use this as a pilot. Yeah.
Okay. Great. How long a study do you think that's going to be?
Well, the study for the pilot is probably going to take about a year.
Okay.
And then we'll probably do another 2 years of getting the rest of the area examined for these properties and look at its predictabilities
Yeah.
and vulnerabilities.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
new project.
Okay. Well, we'll have you back when you get the studies done and we can find out a little bit more about.
Hopefully I have some more data to talk to you about.
Right. Yeah. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you want to bring up?
No, I think Alum Gulch has been worked on. We've got a couple other sites that go into the target areas that we're going to look at. So this is a widespread
Yeah.
potential for the mountain range.
Right. I think if it happened on this tunnel or that tunnel, and
Could
in
happen
some
on-
cases it was good that there was a berm
Yeah.
and held some of it back.
Yeah.
In some other areas, there may not have been any formal closure.
Yeah.
Things are wide open, and
Yeah.
so all of that would have just moved down.
And we've got a dynamic situation with the increasing rain that's taking place and increasing intensity. So it's not a stable situation. So we have something, it may happen again, may happen in 2 years, it may happen in 5. So we see now what happens when rain intensifies in this area.
So an extreme rain
Yeah.
event, we're starting to see what the
Yeah.
implications
Yeah.
are. Okay. Floyd, thanks so much for
Thank
coming
you.
in, and good luck on everything.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good talking to you.
All right. All right. Well, that wraps up our show for today. Thanks for tuning in. Our producer director is Mike Conway, behind the camera and at the keyboard, Jordan Matty. So we'll look forward to seeing you next month on Arizona Mining Review.